In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own solid materials in the user library in vsHome. To start with, I'm just going to open up a job and just show you where we can change the various solid materials on the model. Okay, within the Materials tab on the right-hand side, you can edit the colour for various profiles, external materials such as brickwork and paving, internal materials such as internal wall and flooring, and finally the trims, which includes skirting and the window ledge. We're going to focus on creating new external wall and flooring materials in this video. So if I just go back to the external tab and give you an example of changing the external wall material, you will see there are all these standard options there by default, and you can select them using the drop-down menus provided. And then if I just head to the internal tab and I can select some flooring using the same method, again, there are various standard options to choose from. So to make your own solid materials, we just need to go back to the All Customers screen. And then up into the Preferences in the top right corner. And then over to Materials, just expand that. Just to explain, the System Libraries includes the standard options that we saw a minute ago. These options come as default with the software. And then we have the User Libraries, which is where you can create your own materials. So to create a new solid material, we're going to start by creating a new texture library. So just click this button here. And we need to give it a name. I'm just going to call it vsHome Textures. And then hit Create. Then we can select New Texture from the center of the window. Texture images can be found online, and it's up to you to source your own. I will be using images of some of the standard PST materials for the purpose of this video. And before you start, you'll need to determine the real world width of the image you will be using. The real world width determines how wide the texture would fit on the model in real life, and we'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so as you can see, the new texture has appeared in the selected material area, ready for us to edit. We can start by giving it a name. I'm going to start with the brick texture and just call it brown brick texture. We then select the image by clicking on this box here and selecting it from our files. Now what we need to do is set the category, and you can do that just by clicking on the box here. You need to select User Defined and then choose a name that is relevant to the texture that you're creating. In this case, I'm going to write External Wall. And then hit OK. Then we can set the real world width. As I mentioned before, this determines how wide the texture will fit on the model in real life and will depend on the image you are using. In this case, I need to adjust it to 540 millimeters. The mapping should be set to tessellate from ground for the brickwork texture. And we leave all the cost and price fields set to 0, as we will set the costing when creating the material itself. Okay, so now I can hit Save. And I'm going to do the same for the flooring texture. So again, select New Texture from the center of the window. And give your new texture a name. I'm just going to call it Check Floor Tile. And then select the image of the texture from your files. Adjust the category to suit. A relevant name in this case would be flooring. Hit OK. The real world width for this particular image needs to be adjusted to 500 millimeters. And the mapping can remain set to Plan Origin Locked for the floor tile. And again, the cost and pricing boxes will remain set to 0 as we set the costing when creating the material itself. Okay, so now I can hit save. And you'll see we've created 2 new textures there. So now what we need to do is move on to creating the materials themselves. And we do that by selecting New Material Library first. And we need to give it a name. I'm going to call it vsHome with a short name of vsh. And then hit Create. Then for the solid materials, just head into the Materials sublibrary. And then select New Solid Material from the center of the window. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is give our material a name. I'm just going to call it Brown Brickwork. Then if we select the image below, we can select our texture that we've just created. And if we look down to the bottom, you will see the external wall category that we created and the brown brick texture. Select that and hit OK. Then moving on to the cost. If you are creating your own solid materials for visual purposes only, then you don't need to add a cost here. However, it is possible to build a total cost for the base element of your model by assigning costing to each solid material you create. Although you will need to ensure that you create solid materials for all the major elements of the base, such as damp-proof course, internal wall and skim, as well as external wall and flooring. You will also need to check with your builder for accurate costings, which are required in meters squared. For the sake of this video, I'm going to add a cost of 133 into both the cost and price fields. The software will then calculate your selling prices by adding a markup, which you will need to set via the cost entities area of the preferences. Okay, so now we can move on to the category. Just click the box here and select the relevant category from the list. In this case, it will be external wall, and hit OK. Okay, so now we can hit save. Now we need to create a material for the flooring. So again, just select New Solid Material and adjust the name. I'm going to call it Check Tile. Then select the texture using this box here. Scroll down into the flooring category we created and select the Check Floor Tile texture. Then we just need to set the cost. I'm going to input a value of 33 into the cost and price field. And remember, you will need to set your markup within the cost entities area of the preferences in order for the software to calculate your selling price. Okay, so now we can just move to the category and select the relevant item from the list. In this case, it will be flooring. And then we can hit save. So just before we restart the software, we just need to head over here into conservatories. Scroll down into cost control. Then into base pricing and then price breakdown. The warning will pop up to remind you to restart, and we will do that in just a second, so just hit OK. So just to explain, if costing has been added to the solid materials, then the category associated with that material will need to be ticked within the item inclusion area. So we need to ensure that external walls and flooring has been ticked, which it has. In addition, there are options here to add specific markups based on the category of the material. When set, these will be used in place of the cost entities when calculating the selling prices. There is also an option to add a fixed overhead, which will apply an additional fixed value to the total cost of the base for each project. Okay, so now that we've explained that, we can restart the software. So just hit close. And just close and restart. Okay, so now that I've restarted the software, what we can do now is go into a model and take a look at the new external wall and flooring materials that we just created. Okay, so if we head over to the Materials tab and then over to External, Then use the drop down menu, and if we scroll down to the bottom, you will see brown brickwork with the short name vsh, the external wall material that we created. And now we can apply it to the model. Moving to internal, using the flooring drop down menu again, if we scroll to the bottom, you'll see the check tile again with the short vsh name. And now we can apply that to the model. For more tutorial videos, visit the support area on our website.